Michael, you joined Stoke because you said you like the ownership model. Could you briefly give us your thoughts on the proposed Super League and any impact you think it might have on the club and domestically?
Yeah, look, it came as a real surprise to me to see, obviously, how, first of all, how it came out, and obviously, secondly, well, the reaction to it isn't a surprise, to be honest. It has been very, opposed quite vociferously by, many people in the game, whether that be coaches, management, owners, players, media. And look, I don't think, I don't think it's a positive for the game in Europe, without knowing, a lot about the detail that's proposed. I think the key in all football is to make sure it's competitive, and really there's always there's a consequence to losing as much as there's an upside to winning. I think is key to any football format or any football competition. And when I look at the clubs and their history, and I know UEFA obviously, and that I can't believe that all parties can't find a format which is suitable for them. The Champions League is a magnificent competition. We love the European nights. As a manager, you obviously dream that you'll get a chance to manage a team at that level as players, and as a club, you always dream that you would get a chance to play in that. So I think that hopefully a solution is found, and the intentions that have been muted don't come to fruition.
Thank you. Well, all that matters is the next game, and Coventry are the next opponent. So they've been fighting for their lives, and they had a great win on Sunday against Barnsley. In fact, they've had back-to-back wins, although they're virtually safe and they haven't got a great away record. Again, I'm going to say it's going to be another tough night for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll be a tough game. They're in a good run of form. I think as a manager, and I know this myself, Mark, will be, whilst you always think you're safe, you want to make sure you're safe. And we always, we felt we were safe last season when we got to 50 points with the draw at Bristol City, but we still went into the game against Brentford, the second last game, feeling that we had to win or at least draw to make sure that we'd be safe. And we won that game, and there was a big sigh of relief at that point. So I don't think you ever switch off as a manager in that sense until the job is done. So they've obviously had a good reaction, 2 good results. And we have to be ready for that. We expect a tough game. They've got good energy, Coventry, and they're fighting for their lives. And they also, they're obviously a team that have come up into the division. So that always, I think, leads to hungry players that want to play in the Championship for another year, want to show that they're good enough to be in the Championship, prove that they're Championship class. And Coventry, by all means, is a Championship club, having spent time there as a player. So I know that, and we'll be ready for a very, very tough game.
You've got to find a way to win yourself, haven't you? The 20 clean sheets are great, but you've already said the lack of goals and these draws have meant the league position isn't where you want it to be, and those draws have really killed Stoke, haven't they? You've got the same points as last season, but you obviously want to push on. Yeah,
look, the draws have not helped us, certainly. When you have, I think we've had 8 0-0 draws. I actually thought it was 10, but I just had a look. So, you look at those games and think, well, how many of those games were we hanging on 0-0? Not very many, to be honest, if any. I didn't think, even Saturday past, we're trying to win the game when we're down to 10 men. And so... And equally, we probably go down to 10 men because we push too hard to try and win the game, and Harry gets put in a difficult situation. So yeah, those are things that, look, we need to try to address. I think second half of the season, we've just not been able to get that consistency that we'd hoped. When we looked at the season of 23 games and where we were and what we hoped to replicate in the second half of the season, we've just not managed to do that. And I think there's probably a combination of factors in that. And but equally, the important thing is that we finish the season strong. We've 4 games to go, and I said to players today that we should play these 4 games like we need to win them to stay up, and with that mindset, and hopefully we'll see that response.
If you look at the first half against Preston, I thought it was one of the best performances after the first 10 minutes. The movement was good, the passing was good. And then the second half, there's this just complete change in the football team. You're probably frustrated, but You've already said that it's not fitness. So do you think it might be mindset, or do you think it's because of the injuries you haven't got the ability to change the bench as much as you would like to just freshen up the game?
Listen, it's probably a bit of all three, if I'm honest. I think that's been one of our challenges this season, is that, you know, when we've gone to the bench, rarely has it affected the game in the way we would like it to. So that's been a concern. And obviously the bench is not as strong as what it could be because of the injuries that we have. So that's the scenario that we faced. I think when I watched the game back, you know, even we still had chances in the second half. We weren't as slick in our play. And we've become a team that, you know, we're trying to build the game from the back. We want to play through the pitch, and we're just lacking a little bit in the final third at the minute. So that's the next, I think, phase for the development of the team. And, you know, we don't get enough balls of real quality into the box. And we should do, given the level of possession and play that we have at times. And that's where I see where we are at this minute in time as a team. There's no doubt, look, if we had, you know, a Tyrese Campbell, would that give us a different dimension of a team? I think it would do. But we've had to cope with that, and we've had to cope with other players being out. And I think that, you know, the biggest thing I think that I see in these types of games is we start to, you know, turn the ball over a little bit more often in the second half. And then the game becomes a little bit more of a second ball game, which is what Preston wanted. You know, any of the chances that they had in the game basically came off us turning the ball over, and then possibly us having to concede a free kick, you know, on the edge of the box. They didn't really have many chances from play. I think you know, Adam makes a great save, but ultimately that came at the end of a phase of play with a tackle on Nick Powell, which the referee allowed to go on. I think that's our biggest challenge, is that when we're 0-0, that we have the patience to continue to play, that we believe we can win the game at that point. Our shape and our structure gets a little bit, we get pulled about a little bit, we get a little bit anxious in some of our play. And ultimately then that translates into, you know, often a poorer performance than we'd like in the second half.
But there were positives as well. Christian Norton showed he could stand the physicality of the league, and his pace added a different dimension to the game, I thought.
Yeah, please, young player coming in, not easy in the championship to come in, and I thought he did very well. He's got good physicality. He has, he's got a nice touch. He needs to continue to work on that as link-up play for young play. Rarely do you get a young player that comes into your team and is outstanding link-up play. Normally they come into your team because they're quick and they're threatening behind. And Christian has that natural ability to do that as well. But I thought his link-up play was good. He has to continue to work on that. And I think when I look at him, he's a boy that he's desperate to learn. He's a real sponge for information, you know, but he has to then look to have more attempts on goal in the game as well. He has to recognise, be a little bit more selfish, you know, where are you going to score as a striker? And at times, you know, he was out of the box when he should have been in the box. But those are all things that are natural for a young player, and things that, you know, the responsibility lies with us to try and correct that.
And the under-23s have got into the playoffs. You must be very pleased again. Another aspect of the club's academy doing well. Yeah,
very good. I think, you know, Kevin and Russell and all the academy guys and Gareth Owen at the head of it have done a very good job. We've certainly enjoyed having the academy players around the first team more than we were able to, you know, certainly in the first 12 months of being in the job, having those young players, because the training numbers is a bit more manageable. And probably, you know, the injuries that we've had has enabled us to get the academy players a bit closer to training, and that's where we get to see them firsthand and really benchmark them against our first team players. Sometimes the 23s, it's a little bit more difficult to assess the players, but been delighted with the ones that have come up. I think there's one or two more that, you know, if we can get them up a little bit more often, can really push. And then, as I say, the responsibility of the club, as us, for all of us, is to build the right pathway for them so that they can come through. And ultimately, you need a manager that'll put them in the team. And you know, I'm not scared to put young players in the team. I think I've shown that. But we can't put them all in together. We have to be, you know, as I say, just continue to develop them. And we maybe see one or two more before the end of the season.
Well, on to injury news. You mentioned Nick Powell got what I think is very kind to say, a heavy tackle. Has he survived that heavy tackle, and will he be fit for tomorrow?
Yeah, Nick's fine. He came through. It was a poor challenge. I mean, I've seen it back. You could, the referee has to interpret whether it's a red card. I felt it was. He has to interpret whether it's a yellow card. I felt it certainly was. But the fact that he didn't give a foul is actually staggering to me, to be honest, because I've seen it back, and he's actually, there's no one between him and the incident, and he's 3 to 5 yards from the incident. He couldn't have a better view of it, really. So that was disappointing, and ultimately it led to a moment in the game that could have cost us the game with the save that Adam has to make at the end of it. So yeah, but Nick's okay. He takes a lot of contact, but he takes a lot of contact because he's a top player, and teams in this league now know what Nick Powell's about. They know what threat he is, and a lot of teams man mark him as well. We've seen that. Birmingham man marked him as well. So we just got to try and get him the ball in as good areas as possible that he can affect the game for us as much as possible.
You're clearly going to have to make a defensive change with Harry Souttar disappearing. Is John Obi Mikel going to be fit?
Yeah, John will be fine. He was a wee bit tight at the end of the game. You could see him stretching, but no, he'll be fine. He's trained today, and it takes a lot to take John out, to be honest. He's not one that's not going to play, and it takes a lot for him even to miss training. So yeah, he was good. He was out in the training pitch today, and as I say, it's always good to have him fit and available.
Well, finally for me, you've talked about Adam Davies doing well with that save. You mentioned you were going to rotate the keepers. Are you still planning to do that?
Yeah, I think I have to be fair to Angus as well, because we've brought him here. He got his chance quite early because Adam got injured, and then he himself got injured, and Joe came into the team, and when I felt it was the right thing to take Joe out, Angus was fit and ready to go, and Adam wasn't, to be honest. He was still a week or two behind, so Angus went into the team. And I just felt it was, before the last international, I thought it was fair to give Adam a chance going away on international duty to have a few games. He's done that, and he's played well since he came back. So between now and the end of the season, yeah, we'll rotate that a little bit more.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hans. George now, please.
Michael, just briefly on the European Super League, is that 30 years ago, we had a similar situation when we had a breakaway called the Premier League, and they did break away, and it survived. And that's obviously driven by TV, sponsorship and everything. And just looking at the side of me there, they are saying we are not going to be stopping. We are going to continue, and we are going to push forward to get this European Super League underway. What's your thoughts in that way? Because 30 years ago, as I said, we had a breakaway, and the Premier League was formed aside of what the other leagues.
Yeah, but the Premier League was a rebranding, if you really think about it. We still had 92 league clubs. We maybe changed the format, the name of it, and possibly we reduced the number slightly from, I think, was it 22 clubs were maybe in the old first division. So we went from 22 to 20. This is different because it's ultimately meaning, the clubs are wanting a guaranteed place in the European Super League, which means that they'll have a vast wealth over and above what they already have, which can only make the Premier League less competitive if you have that imbalance in wealth. And secondly, if your Premier League position doesn't affect your participation in the European League, I'm not sure that that's competitive. And that's where I think, we have to look and try and protect the game that, as I say, we reward the teams that do well. And we the consequence of not doing well is possibly, you go down a division. Just allowing participation because you're a big club or you're perceived to be a big club, I think is dangerous for not only the leagues in England, but I think the leagues throughout Europe as well. If and many of those leagues aren't as competitive as what the Premier League is, for example, where at times even the Bundesliga, where typically there's 2 or 3 teams that look like they can win it, and pretty much Bayern Munich win it every year. I can't see how it would be more competitive if those teams were automatically guaranteed a place in the European League as well.
So moving on, of course, tomorrow night, you're back in action, and you obviously want to finish high as you possibly can. But Coventry not out of the wood yet, so they'll be coming there with that in mind. I suppose the temptation is for you to rejig the situation and I suppose give other players an opportunity, but you want your best team out there to get a result, Michael, don't you?
We'll pick a team to try and win the game. Simple as. We've not done anything else in the previous 42 games, and that won't change between now and game 46. Look, we have injuries and we have a suspension now with Harry Souttar, and we have a lot of tired bodies. We have players that are running on empty a little bit, and but they're going to have to go for another 3 or 4 games. We'll be able to shuffle the pack a little bit, but not too much. And as I say, we want to make sure in the last 4 games we're as competitive as possible and that we win as many of those games as possible.
It's good to know there's something on the game, though, isn't there, really, for both teams? That's the big driving force, isn't it, really, for both teams?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always something on the game for me, to be honest. I think, you know, I've not played out too many games in my professional career where I've not felt that there's something on the game. Coventry have had a really good response in the last 2 games. That's given them a bit of breathing space and away from the bottom of the league. But, you know, they'll still be looking over their shoulder. I know what that is like, having been in that experience last season. So, yeah, they'll come here and they'll want to try and add to the 2 wins they've had to make sure that they're mathematically safe. They'll have that sort of 50-point barrier in their mind. But we have to think about ourselves, and we've got 56 points, and certainly we want to be in the 60s when the season finishes.
And finally, for me, Michael, obviously, you say as you approach the game and look forward to it, how have you assessed this second half of the season? Because it looked at one time as if you were certainly going to be there or thereabouts challenging.
Yeah, it's been a challenge the second half of the season. We've not had the results that we'd have hoped. We've not had the continuity that we've hoped, and get those periods where we've had, I think, dominance in terms of consistent wins, and it's been very, very patchy. And I think we look at that at the end of the season and drill into it a little bit more. We've had a number of factors we've had to deal with. Obviously, the players we've lost through injury have been a factor in that. We've been young, I think, at times. Maybe if we look at what the players we brought in January, Jack Clark and Robbie Matondo and Reece Norring-Davis, all 3 of them only 20 years of age. So it was their first real experience in the championship, along with Harry Souttar and Nathan Collins. We had a young side on a number of occasions, and mixed with older experienced players as well. So we're constantly trying to transform the squad, get it to a place where we can be as competitive as possible. But we look back, there'll be a lot of learnings for us in the second half of the season that hopefully we'll have to try and address before next season.